Hi there, hope you're doing well. It's Q here, and for this screencast, I'm going to be going over the brand new G2 Components documentation website, which is what you're seeing right here. And it is very brand new, hot off the presses, very Spartan at the moment. As you can see, there's a lot more documentation coming soon. But what is here is a handful of documentation for some of the more commonly used and more important components of this library. And if you're starting to play around or prototype with G2, you may be using some of these already, such as HStack, View, Spacer, Grid, and Flex. I have a handy little note thing that for me to go over some of the features that are part of this documentation experience. And before I go into this, I want to highlight that the reason for some of these features and the mindset behind creating this documentation site is in service of the designers and the developers and whoever it is that will be using G2 to do their work. It is designed to make sure that they are successful. It is designed to help them get started faster and to help them be more productive, so that ultimately the final things that they build, the final things that they design, will be better for the end users. With that out of the way, so first feature, jump search. Oh man, I rely on searching very heavily to jump around things. So for the G2 documentation website, on the top right-hand corner, there's a little search button that you can click, and it will show the jump search. And for you keyboard commandos out there, if you don't want to click buttons and you prefer keyboard shortcuts, you can use Command J on your keyboard. Or for folks on Windows, you can use Control J. And as a secondary kind of enhancement to this, and it's not really listed here, or it's not really displayed here, you can also do Command K or Control K. The reason why I have it mapped to K is also because sometimes I mistype J. It's just helpful. Anywho, this jump search, you can search for anything that's currently available within the G2 website. And there's autocomplete, and then there's keyboard navigation as well, pressing up and down on these guys. And if I click enter, it'll jump you to that particular documentation, unless you're already on that on that page, which is what happened right there, because I was already on Spacer, so I couldn't really jump to Spacer. So as I'm going through jump, you may notice something very interesting. The browser URL changes as I type. And this is very handy because if I type the word like stack, this URL becomes bookmarkable. So I can share this URL, and then it'll once it loads, it'll jump up the jump search, and it'll show the results that I had typed in previously. So this then becomes shareable for another designer, another developer, whoever. It's very handy stuff. And for those of you who like doing like browser workflowy kind of things, the search param is S, so you technically could add a custom search to something like Chrome, which makes it even nicer. Oh yes, drag snippet, that is the next feature. So within jump search, any of the items here that are components, you could actually click and drag and paste it into any text-based editor. Or I don't know about Windows, but on the Mac, you can actually drag and paste it into your desktop, and it'll save as a text snippet, which is very handy. The downside, though, for my VS Code friends out there, is this doesn't work with VS Code. And this is actually a limitation in VS Code. And I looked this up. It's kind of strange. But yeah, this doesn't work in VS Code, unfortunately. So as a workaround, any item that you have selected here, whether it's with your mouse or with the up and down arrows, if you do a copy command, which is Command C on the Mac or Control C on Windows, you can see that I'm able to copy and paste it into VS Code. So if I were to just change this to something else, S, sure. I can copy Spacer, I can paste in Spacer. Oops. Copy Spacer, paste in Spacer. Oh yeah, that was a Spacer one. Sorry, I forgot what the snippet looked like. Or I can copy card, I can paste in card. And you will get a little bit of an animation, like little bounce, just to let you know that you've copied something. So yeah, this is a tiny little workaround for the folks using VS Code. It's better than nothing, but it's not the best. More on that a little bit later. Jumping back to my notes. Definition popover. That is the next big little feature here. And the definition popover was heavily inspired by GitHub, actually. So if I'm taking a look at some documentation and it references another component within G2, sorry, hit my mic, hit my mic right there. If you were to mouse over one of those, you will see that the background will change to yellow. And the moment I click it, you will get a little popover with a description of the component and also a code snippet of that component that you can then copy and then paste it into whatever it is you need. There's also a link for you to jump to that documentation. And this applies throughout the entire documentation site. So it's not exclusive to just VStack or Spacer or one of those. So if I jump to, say, subheading, you will see that we have the definition popover for text as well. Very, very handy stuff. And next little feature is code examples. So yeah, code examples is what you're seeing right here. We have some sort of code snippet and also what the thing may look like when it renders. But the thing is, this is a live code editor. That means that I can start typing in stuff and I will see it up above. And this is very handy for trying to understand certain components that you're trying to learn. For example, Flex, or more abstract ones like HStack or VStack if you're not used to them. You can play around with them. So here I can see I can add a couple more items, and HStack, horizontal stack, is appropriately horizontally aligning all the items inside. But for certain components like HStack, VStack, Grid, Flex, some layout ones that are doing their job, but you can't really see them doing their thing, right? You can't, unlike a button or a text input or text input or one of those, you can't actually see the components render unless you click on this handy dandy feature called Show Inspector on the top right of these examples. So once Inspector is enabled, when I mouse into the code area, the preview area, it will tell me what component I'm mousing over. In this case, we see HStack is wrapping everything, and we have individual text items or text components within, and they're spaced appropriately apart because of how HStack works. So a good example is here in Spacer. We're using Spacer to take up the remaining space of this area. So if I were to remove the background color for a second, you wouldn't really be able to tell that it's doing its job unless you use the inspector. We can see that, oh yeah, look, Spacer's taking up the entire space. And man, Inspector, it's great for both debugging and also for learning. And after I developed Inspector, I added it in here, I thought, man, wouldn't it be cool to be able to see how the entire site was built? Because, by the way, this entire site was built with G2, which is great because, one, it works. That's one thing. But two, I'm able to use the actual components to create full experiences, full UIs, and to be able to make incremental improvements with them along the way. So for the full site inspector at the top right-hand corner, you will see a toggle that says inspect. And the moment you turn that on, you will see the inspector grids being applied to everything, the inspector borders around all the components. And as I mouse over any of the components, any of the G2 components at least, you will see their labels pop up. In this case, on the left-hand side, the left-hand nav, we will see some menu items, we will see a subheading, we will see some text up there, we will see the whole thing is wrapped in a VStack for vertical stacking, and the whole thing is wrapped inside of a scrollable component, which is why it's scrollable. So yeah, site-wide inspector. And these settings, by the way, this local inspector here, this code snippet inspector or site inspector, it persists. So as you jump around the site, if you have those turned on, they will stay on for you. which is a convenient little feature. And the last thing I want to get into, and I did not forget you VS Code friends out there, is I've actually published an extension for VS Code called G2 Component Snippets. You can download this from the VS Code Marketplace, and once you have it, then the moment you type in G2, you will see a collection of snippets that you can then inject into whatever code you're writing. Now, this only works for React based files, so you have to make sure you're working in like a JS or a TSX or one of those like React compatible formats in order for this to work. But the moment that it is, if I type in say G2 HStack, it'll render the HStack accordingly, and this applies to anything that is supported right now. So text, view, VStack, heading, grid, so on. So here I have a grid of 3. Let me change it to a grid of 6, and now I have a grid of 6. Very, very handy stuff. And by the way, the snippet that appears here is the same as the snippet that appears here and also here. And the reason why that little detail is important is because all of them use the documentation site as the source of truth. So that means as we continue to improve and add to the docs, the snippets, wherever it is they appear, whether it's in the live code example, the definition popover, or VS Code snippets, will improve over time as well. So yeah, that is quite a jam-packed walkthrough of the brand new G2 documentation site. And it's available at g2-components.com. And again, it's still a very brand new, very Spartan, very work in progress kind of thing. But feel free to explore, feel free to poke around, and feel free to start prototyping if you feel so inclined. And thank you so much for your time today, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Catch you later. Bye.